It's the 28th of May. Bang! I'm in your face. No Zoom tonight. Too much to get through. Can't go wasting it on any old Zooms. YouTube algorithm is not your friend, by the way, so consider doing a bunch of that kind of stuff. If you don't, I'm going to ship you to the moon. You'll be the first one there in 50 years. That can't be too bad. Hi, everybody. Welcome, everyone. Except for nuclear industry. Get a life, you weirdos. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. 2 and 2 equal boom. Oh, yeah, that's right, MC squared. MC squared equals by planet Earth. That's actually me punching YouTube in the nose. You know, it's YouTube. I got a picture of YouTube. There he is, there. Mr. Google himself. Hi, Mr. Google. How are ya? Hey, calm down, Charlie. Hi, everybody. Worldwide welcome. It always takes us a minute to get up to stopping speed. You know the routine. Gives a little click. Consider share me on other medias worldwide. Let's defeat them. Don't use my name. They'll figure out who I am eventually. Don't use anything with Fukushima. Just upload the video with different titles. Cute kitties or watch the bunny hop. Put those kind of titles on the video. Let's sabotage the industry before they sabotage your entire future. Who are they? Well, some of them are the International Atomic Energy Agency. They're literally nobody's friend, right? And Mr. Gruesome himself, Raphael Grossi. What a nice name for him, Gross. No irony in that one. Both of these pictures are the official pictures of Reactor 4. Both of those, let me repeat that, because I know that probably sounded pretty weird, right? No, Dana, they're not both Reactor 4. No, I agree with you. I'm not saying that. I'm saying they're officially, both of those pictures are the official pictures of Reactor 4. One of them's not real. I'll let you figure that out. We done some serious forensic investigative journalism, and we decided to count the tanks, because, you know, what kind of slop would I be if I didn't count the tanks, right? So we only found 750 of the 1,000 tanks. TEPCO needs a new accountant. Did you know the A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs? All it shoots is depleted uranium and radioactive materials. They got rid of the latter part of the acronym and called it DU, but it's still DOLRAM. How many people think that they're in the building at the fuel pool at the top of that building over there, 120 feet above the whatever stump you want to call that thing over there? This is what a journalist award should look like. That would make a nice journalist award, wouldn't it? Here's the nicest person in the nuclear industry. Just kidding. She's another Rod Adams. She's Rod Adams with hairy armpits, basically. We'll get to her pretty quick. U.S. Department of Energy helicopter measures radiation in advance of Indianapolis 500. Each year, this stupid scam is pulled off on the Indianapolis 500. This is about brainwashing. Think about how many people watches Indianapolis 500 at home. It's absurd, right? And so the disgusting nuclear industry got to spoil even shit like that. If you see a low-flying object in the sky near the speedway this week, it's not a bird, It's not the Hulk. It's not the Spider-Man or Superman. No, it's nuclear stupid. It's actually a useless helicopter that is pretending to monitor radiation in preparation for the Indianapolis 500. This is 100% scam materials. It's an absurd scam what they're doing, right? Let me explain that very quick. They have to avoid all supermarkets because, as you know, most nuclear power plants are by supermarkets, so that's going to be radioactive. Hang on, we got a little bit of emergency here. My lights are possessed, and they're doing their own things, kind of like my teeth, where they're all doing their own things. It's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's nuclear stupid, man. The Department of, this is National Nuclear Security Administration, and the people that run it used to work at Walmart. No offense to people who work at Walmart, but shouldn't be handling nuclear. Is conducting the helicopter flights to measure background radiation. Standard precautions, they tell us, to protect the health and the safety. If that was true, you would stop all wars, wouldn't you? So, the numbers in America, the studies out of America, the radioactive fallout, that never goes away, by the way, is absurd. But yet their fancy helicopters can't seem to find any of it. How interesting is that? It's a 100% brainwashing scam by the nuclear industry. They'll fly in a grid at 200 feet above the ground at speeds of 80 miles per hour, and it's going to measure radiation. So that tells you, like, in order for the helicopter to measure the radiation on the ground at 200 feet above it, is the atoms are pulsing energy at the helicopter. So it can pulse a long way, every second, almost at the speed of light. The flights will occur over the speedway 25th till today, according to a stupid press release. The Pentagon's got 29,000 public relation officers. Their job is to spam you everywhere you are on the planet. The measurement system dates back to 1958, used to measure radiation from U.S. nuclear testing. There's another scam. In recent decades, the system has been used for rapid response to radiological emergencies. How come I've never heard of that? I'm just curious. This is disappointing every time I see somebody like this. The big lie about nuclear waste, she advocates MOX fuel. Oh, it's harmless, like a banana and a potato chip. What if we could actually use nuclear waste? Well, why don't you try using the 30 million one-ton bags they got at Fukushima first, pinhead? How about using the millions and millions of one-ton bags? Huh? Can't hear you. She's got almost 750,000 subscribers, but none of them, her job is to manipulate you, to deceive you, your loved ones and vulnerable people. She makes a living by being a cunt, basically. This is reactor 3, the stump of reactor 3 to your left, and the stump of reactor 4. She's pretending it doesn't look like that, like the rest of them. They're growing food right alongside of one-ton bags of radiation. She thinks it's cool. No, it's cool, Dana. The big lie about nuclear waste, she puts her hands up like she's a mime. And they have to choose the pictures because she's actually... there's another girl out there reminds me of her. She looks normal, but then she smiles. And you're like, oh, Jesus, what was that, Dana? Give me a little warning, Dana, before you show me shit like that. I hear you. It's all good, man. So, you can't put pellets in your hands once it goes through the chain reaction, by the way. I despise people like, these are mass murderers. These are the scum of the earth, people like her. They're the reason you haven't got a future, see? She should go down there and tell us why nuclear is so wonderful if Fukushima abandoned ghost towns. She should go down and tell the owners of these abandoned malls and banks and schools and universities and institutions and homes, and tell the people that can't go back to the graveyards to visit their loved ones how wonderful nuclear is, you sack of shit. She's a sack of shit. That's Cleo Abram. Another word for piece of shit. Back in October 2021, Vox, so if you subscribe to Vox, unsubscribe from those pieces of shit right now, released a video about nuclear power featuring Mrs. Prick herself. The gist of the video was that New York's then recent decision to shut down Indian Point nuclear reactor was a bad idea. As Abram pointed out in a 10-minute clip, shutting down nuclear reactors is counterproductive. Hey, we're talking about Indian Point. I'll explain it to you. Hang on. New York then recent decision to shut. It wasn't a recent decision. It's an old, decrepit, brittle reactors at 1,000 psi. You got to shut them down. As Abrams pointed out in a 10-minute fake clip, makes a living by being a piece of shit, a lying scumbag. For anyone who believes climate change is a problem, and so they've been using this for quite a few years to try to bludgeon you into acquiescing, right? For anyone who believes climate change is a problem, it has to be dealt with immediately. Well, if you want to deal with climate change, the first thing you need to think about is the world's 15 biggest ships create more pollution than all the cars on the planet combined. The world's 15 biggest ships produce more pollution than all the cars, the 760 million cars on the planet. Back to scum of the earth, disguised as a human. She talked about closing down Indian Point. Well, let me point out a few things about Indian Point. Point, which is upriver from New York and millions of other people. One of India's Point's reactors, meanwhile, sits atop a fault line, Cleo. Though these aging plants have a devastating impact on surrounding fish populations, environmental analysts in both states, New York, New Jersey, have found the facilities kill more than 17 billion fish each year in New York and another 9 billion in New Jersey. And that the National Marine Fisheries Service has found that the once-through cooling systems are vacuuming up trillions of newly hatched fish and destroying in the heat exchangers, and that there's strong evidence the decline in the fish stocks along the entire northeast Atlantic seaboard is due more to the destruction of those baby fish than the overfishing of adults by commercial fleets. And that the Indian Point plant on the Hudson River has to suck in 2.5 billion gallons of water a day and boil it off into your environment. And it kills about 2 billion juvenile mature fish also each year in the screens and the thermal plumes. And that the NRC estimated that more than 300 billion baby fish are killed each year when they are sucked into the 40-foot wide intake pipes, Cleo. I don't know why she hates humanity so much. But this is what she gets paid for, being a monster. Just how she makes a living, right? And there's a few of them out there, like Madison. So she's pretending she's a journalist. And what does a journalist do? It lies, manipulates, and deceives you. That's what a journalist actually is. Woohoo, I got 19 people on my show. What's up with that? Kicking it. Should South Korea prosecute the recent nuclear delegation to Fukushima for faking the inspections. And that's exactly, unequivocally, what they done. And look at that, I got 19 viewers. Doing my show for a decade, 19 viewers. She comes out and tells a bunch of lies, and she gets 750,000 subscribers and millions of views on a video. That one's got 952,000. That'll keep growing because the blogs will keep putting her up there to suck teens and males into going and watching the videos, see? An actual real-life mass murderer, that's what she actually is. She's the opposite of a human. She's one of those creatures. Instead, monster Cleo, Abram, mass murderer, serial killer, just walks through the explanation of why shutting the reactor down at Indian Point, while viewed as a victory by some on the left, there's got to be a left, right, far left, extreme right, Mao, Pol Pot. Got to be some kind of political agenda. It can't be for common sense, right? It has to be a divide. They got to divide you. Actually looks pretty counterproductive to anyone who supports dramatic action to reduce the CO2. Well, look, let me explain climate change to you, Cleo, whatever you actually really are. Here's how climate change works. This not gas, oil, or coal plume or carbon plume. This is Fukushima radioactive plume after 19 days. It's an invisible plume pulsing energy every second. Just like all day long from 400 plus fuel pools worldwide that are splitting the atoms into the environment are doing the same thing. These plumes never go away. The radiation never stops pulsing energy every second. Gas, oil, and coal emissions, carbon, which is, you can't have birds or insects or trees or puppies or bushes or grass or any life. If we got no carbon, the planet will look just like the moon, Cleo. But that's not what she's about. She's doing this to make a good dollar. She makes a good dollar with 750,000 useful idiots on her site. She's doing that so she can be a professional monster. She's not naive, she's not gullible, she's not misled, she's a monster. And she's worried about carbon change, worried about the world's 15 biggest ships, for starters, produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet, and that there's 90,000 of them on the ocean at any given time. That's 8 trillion or 40 trillion people a day, animosity equivalent if you scale it up to what's here right now. Not worried about tin cans and pop bottles, Dana. A nuclear kills fish. Did I mention that to you, Cleo, or AKA mass murderer? Radiation is the enemy of humanity and the 8 million species. Oh, and, Cleo. Moving on to the next useful idiot. Teen campaigning for nuclear energy in Australia, where it's legal. Not old enough to vote, but old enough to try to get the laws changed. So the media is going to... What's wrong with his head? Like, his head looks a friggin' lot like another useful idiot out there, right? Sam Brixton, right? We got a story on him coming up right away. His parents should be arrested, charged with child abuse for letting him promote nuclear. Well, most teenagers are, in the bedroom or playing video games or sports. 16-year-old William is committed to seeing nuclear energy thrive in Australia. We're confronting an energy climate crisis, so he bought Kool-Aid, hook, line, and sinker, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find children that are moldable and are incapable of rationalizing reality, and then put them on a pedestal and drive them over the deep edge, right? Like they done with that other one from Sweden. What's her face? The schoolboy is the face behind nuclear, because nuclear doesn't have a spokesperson, right? Every spokesperson in the nuclear industry ever tried to put on a pedestal, the world rejected them because they're kooky, batshit lunatics. So now they're going to try to use a vulnerable young kid with a weird-looking head. Vicious, eh? They got him in the Senate in Australia to tell his version of the pro-nuclear, because he bought into it hook, line, and sinker. Campaigning for the ban to be lifted because he believes small modular reactors could be the way of the future. Well, they don't even exist, first off. Why not? There's other things to campaign about. Like,
my understanding is on top of what you...
Does that 16-year-old kid understand that the people to the right are fake and being on the building to the left? And if that happens in Australia, they're going to do the same thing there. They're going to fake it. And that little kid, that's child abuse to use the kid like that. And it's child abuse to put the kid on TV. It's child abuse to put the kid in Congress to sprout propaganda from the nuclear industry. Nuclear industry should be charged with child abuse. And the parents should be arrested for letting them do it. Can you imagine how freaking stupid they actually are? Institute Energy Climate Change Director Tony Wood. Climate Change Director. I never get sick of this shit. The Grattan Institute Energy and Climate Change Director. What do you do for a living? I'm the Grattan Institute Energy Climate Change Director. Tom Doo-Doo. It's a small modular reactor. Could be the way of the future. But Australia should leave it to other countries to do the legwork. Well, they don't exist. Could be reliable, but the problem is a very small number actually exist. None exist. There is no small modular reactors. Tom. Piece of shit. Okay, I'll calm down. Because if I call everybody that's a piece of shit tonight, you know how this whole conversation is going to degrade, don't you? The problem is a very small number actually exists. None exist, Tom, you piece of Wonder Bread. How about that? I'll use Wonder Bread instead of a piece of shit from now on. Yeah, like that's going to happen. My problem is I consciously consciously have to remember not to call him a piece of fucking shit. I constantly gotta check myself before I say it, and that's why you get a few ha-has, because I'll say some random shit at the last second. I was getting pretty good, and it all degraded today. I mean, oh crap! I can see now. How's how Australia going to make us electricity? You ever heard of geothermal? Morons. Mr. and Mrs. Stupid said their son had even managed to convince them of the benefit of disease factories, aka nuclear power. Oh, it's from 9 now. Jeez, that don't make any sense. They wouldn't lie to you, would they? Speaking of lawyers, UN Dispatch. I cracks up every time I sees Ralphie Grossi. The IAEA is trying to save humanity, folks. That's probably the biggest lie you're going to hear this year from a nuclear disaster. They are a nuclear disaster. They're not regulatory. They don't have any influence. They can't fine a country. They can't impose sanctions on a country. They have to get their big brother UN to do it. Russia prepares for false flag operations at Zaporizhzhia nuclear disease factory in Ukraine. That place is surrounded by farms, by the way, on the other side of the river, where the prevailing winds blow. So they're claiming false flag. You don't see that headline too often in the mainstream media. They might do it themselves and then blame it on Russia, right? That's probably what's going to happen. They only cut off power 7 times. It's a miracle it didn't melt down. They didn't shut off the reactors until about the fourth time. Apparently shut them off permanently. A Japanese firm invested in maritime nuclear development core power. But this is a doozy. This is their version of a nuclear-powered something. I'm not sure what the frig that is. What the frig is that thing? Has the world finally lost his mind or what? It's got lifeboats, Dana. It's probably a boat. Okay, if you insist. By the way, I'm pretty sure there won't be a nuclear power commercial shipping this time either. Look at the picture they used. A nuclear power station on a barge. I actually like that picture. That's I gotta put that in my collection of stupid. Hang on here. Because that's the definition of stupid right there. It's all fun and game until it melts down and kills all the species. Outage at Atlantic Canada's only disease factory plant drags on in New Brunswick. That's, and so that covers so much. I don't really, so I'm over there. America's right there, by the way. That line right here that extends into the ocean, that's the border. I dove the Bay of Fundy up there. That was a trip. 52-foot tide exchange in 5 hours. It's like swimming against Niagara Falls. You can't do it. You'll tear the face mask, the Pegasus right off your head. But a great way to kill the Atlantic Ocean was with a bunch of those creatures. So again, it was supposed to be shut down, a planned outage. They're going to do a whole bunch of repairs again and change it from fuel. They usually change about 40% or more of the fuel. Current outage was supposed to, and they've had a just absurd, that thing just got a 10-year extension on top of that, which we fought against, to last for 22 days, 7 days ago. Or 40, that's 40 days, so almost an extra 20 days. And they won't tell you, like they wouldn't tell you where the leak was the last time. So we got a story from Monticello coming up too tonight. From the Mississippi. Nuclear Power, which owns New Brunswick Power, which is the government, owns the station, the disease factory, said it expects the plant will be online later this week, next week, or the week after. Sometime in the future. They experienced a lot of outages over the last few years, right? Point Leper Nuclear Disease Factory in New Brunswick. These are great, big, stupid disease factories. Outages are a necessary element to protect the long-term life of the station, ability to provide safe, reliable, predictable, low-carbon baseload power. So whoever wrote that, their parents should have to go to work at Fukushima. Ability to provide safe, reliable, predictable, low-carbon base power. Baseload power. Desperate to brainwash you. Eh? Every chance, every story, they're desperate to brainwash somebody. As long as you brainwash one, they're happy, right? In June 2022, it was granted a license extension. And it was hilarious because the local fire department said they were ready for any emergency. Like, every other nuclear plant that melted down, they all ran away. These guys are going to do the same. You can't do nothing to stop a meltdown. You can't do nothing. And they're going to lie to you and pretend that you didn't pollute half your country, but you did. And there's 1,800 diseases from that. There's heart problems and liver problems and lung problems and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline and Alzheimer's and dementia and autism and diabetes and Down syndrome. which is just a fraction of a fraction of a percent of what's actually the diseases, the illnesses. And they just want to acknowledge cancer and barely acknowledge, and then they'll only usually acknowledge thyroid. But if your thyroid is going to get cancer, if it's so saturated with anthropogenic man-made radiation is getting cancer, then you're producing stupid amount of radioactive hormones. It's all downhill after that for you, or your children, or your loved ones, or your parents or grandparents, or your pets, or all the species in your community, your life. 38% is nuclear in New Brunswick from the disease factories. 22% is hydropower. 15% is natural gas. 14% is coal. The remaining is a mix of wind, biomass, and petroleum. Notice you don't see geothermal in that. Nuclear industry doesn't want geothermal anywhere. It fights geothermal every time. The whole point of Lepore nuclear disease factor was to reduce emissions. No, it wasn't built to reduce emissions originally, you bird brain. Manager of Climate Solutions, Conservation Council of New Brunswick. Again, right? You right? Remember the other guy he mentioned for climate? Up in that other story. Whatever. Just keep going. Never get through with doing shit like that, Dana. Imagine somebody asks Mo what he's I'm the manager of Climate Solutions, Conservation Council in New Brunswick. I'm better than you and all the other insects and birds and mammals and animals. I matter, not them. Europe has gone mad. When you figure that out, we've been screaming that for a decade. Maybe we'll launch a preemptive nuclear strike. Dimitri, we've heard from him a lot. Hey, what's Sam up to? You know Sam, everybody's friend? But when you talk about Sam, you got to describe him as them. You can't call him a he or a she. You got to describe him as a them. He's not male or female. He says he's a them. He's a schizophrenic, right? When he showed up in court for stealing women's underwear and stuff from people's luggages at the airports, because he was the waste. He was Joe Biden's waste specialist, right? Nuclear waste specialist. He has a nuclear engineering degree. They haven't, rather, I got to call them them or they, right? Or they're. They have a nuclear engineering degree, by the way, don't you know? And he was responsible for the mixed oxide fuel, I believe, at quite a few years back. Was it the Savannah River site or something? He was the guy who done all the paperwork to actually get that started. It flopped, like everything else he's ever touched. It flops. Will be placed with the general population in the men's jail next week because he didn't turn up in court and they issued a warrant for him and picked him up. And he was in, the nuclear industry put him in charge of them, I should say. Whatever them is, I don't want nothing to do with it. And fix that shit, man. Find a cure for shit like that. I mean, you know, like the kooky stuff that he was doing. He could be a normal person, be whatever he wants, but he can be whatever creature he wants to be, but he should be reasonable. White House cover-up Biden camp exposed for hiding transcript of the bumbling president forgetting how his son died again. Again, he claimed that his son died in Iraq. He probably died because of Iraq, because of the depleted uranium that was being used, right? The dirty bombs they were using down there. But he died. Now he was he went right up the ladder. He was 80-year-old was talking to U.S. soldiers during a trip to Japan last week, and he was telling them that his son died in the Iraqi war, but he didn't. He was a major in the U.S. Army. He was a lawyer. Here's what Biden said. He said he was a major in the U.S. Army, and we lost him in Iraq. That's like the second or third time he's done that. Now, it's no secret that Joe Biden is not all there. There's something really weird about it. Some even suggest he could be a robot or a clone of some type. That would actually make some sense. That his late son passed away in Iraq was not the first time. The 80-year-old commander-in-chief with a nuclear button at his fingertips. That's a creepy-looking picture right there, boy. Didn't he run with Sarah Palin for vice president years ago? Biden's insistence that his son passed away in Iraq, as well as a number of other mistakes, gaffes, and blunders, have created a substantial concern that the 80-year-old is batshit crazy. And I personally agree with him. Super Typhoon Mawar, also known as Betty in the Philippines, strengthening the most powerful storm on Earth in more than 2 years. Winds at 200-mile-per-hour gust, 70-foot waves. Jeez. 160 knots or 185 miles per hour. Gusts were at 215 miles per hour. We've only seen storms regularly like this since Fukushima. If you look pre-Fukushima, during the nuclear bomb testing, we've seen some of these storms. But since Fukushima, we're seeing multiple typhoons, cyclones, hurricanes exceeding 200 miles per hour on land each year. And these are monsters. These are 700, 800, 900 miles across. They hit the coastline and they just grind on the coastline. Normally they slow down and move in and become tropical storms. These storms typically don't. When they're peaking, they're coming ashore at 200, 250 miles per hour, not counting gusts. And we've covered it over the years. But we've never seen anything like it pre-Fukushima. When the wind's 75 miles per hour, nearly 210 miles per hour gusts. Look, if it's blowing 175, it's going to gust 260, 270. Not 215. Typhoon Betty Mawar batters Guam. What used to be jungles, which took hundreds of years to mature, looked like toothpicks. That's a real storm, eh? Do you think enhanced global governance could end the menace of war? So enhanced, because we already have global government is called United Nations. That's what they are, right? The New World Order. Hang on, I said it. I better play the video. Or Dana's making shit up. We got a bunch of videos from yesterday and today to play at the end of the show. I got it all edited out. Thank goodness I done that, because I'll explain that to you when I play the videos later. The hell are you looking for, Dana? I don't know. Looking for my brain, because nuclear got a tendency to drain it on me. Oh, there he is. Speaking of creatures, there's one right there. George W. Bushy. George the Monster Boogeyman.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
So he's calling United Nations the New World Order. Dwight Eisenhower called them the UN military-industrial complex, and he warned you about the creepy, disgusting UN. UN used to be called League of Nations. Now it's the hateful 190 militaries. So in the Council of Government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex, aka United Nations. And the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist, and we must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. That we should take nothing for granted, and only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machines of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. And so I warn you about the military-industrial UN every show, because they've left us no choice. And what did George Bush call them? The New World Order, multiple times in that video clip. Researchers unveil a new protocol for GHZ quantum state storage. And so they'll find these savants or these autism, functional young adults with autism, and they'll get them to focus in on cracking these things, because they can't do it themselves, right? And then they'll use it to destroy humanity, and if there's other ones out there, they'll destroy them. They can't stop themselves. They're compelled to destroy. That's why they got hired by the nuclear industry and the military-industrial complexes. That's a good read, though, if you're interested in that kind of shit. I like it. I'm not going to bore you with it, but it's the same thing with this. This is scientists from China, of all places, because 70% of Chinese go to university. In North America, it's around 12%. Chinese scientists developed technology to create 3D ceramic printing without support. So they can just print in thin air. And you know, that's not going to turn out good for humanity, that the misery machine got access to stuff like that. A new technique will enable the ceramics to be printed in the air without having any support structures, and which means they just open the door on stupid. So they talked about why tree stabilized zirconia. I just want to run you through this because I was trying to. So it's also known as white tritium, 3 oxide. And so, like, if you take natural stuff and you irradiate it, this is what I'm going to talk about. So they have different stuff they can use with that: lasers, gas lightings, dental ceramics. But if you take this material, which is very limited resources, mostly out of Russia, from a certain mine in Russia, if you take this and radiate it, it was approved as a new mineral species in 2010. So if you take just the white tritium and radiate it, so you take 83 has a half-life of 7 minutes. So that's a powerful emitter, right? So that's 70 minutes lifespan. And it's going to decay to a solid one. But 86 has a half-life of 14.7 hours. So if you irradiate it, you can make that one there. And 14.7 hours is 140 hours. That's enough from a nuclear accident to make it across the ocean to your countries. It's a very powerful one that doesn't get put in the equation. Now, this one has a half-life of 90Y of 2.6 days, which means it's 26-day half-life, so it can circle the globe. It's a very harsh emitter too, right? And that 91 has a half-life of 58 days, which is 580 days. That's 580 days we're talking about. Stabilized zirconium, if you put that through a chain reaction, right, and you take like 85 zirconium, has a half-life of 7.8 minutes. But it decays to something, right? So it decays to 85, which yttrium, which has a half-life of 2.6 hours, so multiply all of these by 10, right? That's gonna, 85 is gonna decay to strontium 90, or 85 strontium, which is 64 days, 640 days. So 640 days, 48 days. 648 days is 1.77 years. So when you take the natural elements, right, and irradiate them, you're creating real monsters. These are anthropogenic man-made radiation. I just wanted to make sure, because I don't always put that out there for people, but that's important, that how you can take natural, if it melts down, it comes in contact with natural stuff like cement and whatever, and steel or rebar or wood or whatever, it'll radiate the shit out of that and release that into the environment as an agent to attack humanity. So now they can, without no support, they can 3D print dangerous stuff. Speaking of dangerous, Savannah River site uncovering its role during the Cold War. It's shocking, it's so hard to find the truth, right? Where the government produced plutonium and tritium, you know, the harmless tritium, by the way, which is not harmless. They added the nuclear weapons to double the power or triple, quadruple the power of them. You call them hydrogen bombs, right? No trespassing by order of the degenerate Atomic Energy Commission. And they're degenerates, eh? I couldn't quite read what they had there, but who cares? It has 310 square miles along the Savannah River, which runs all the way down to the Atlantic, I might add. And eventually, when it gets down to the coastline, it starts going through all kinds of communities and radiates the entire coastline downstream from it. Which I'm surprised he didn't have it upstream of all those communities, to tell you the truth. But when you get down to the Pacific Ocean, there's lots of communities it's got to run through. And they dump, this is a legacy nuclear site, and they dump so much nuclear waste into that river. That was their dumping ground for the 50s and 60s, right? Holtec to make Palisades restart decision by July. They're trying to get a bunch of money to restart the reactor, which would be a first, right? The reactor is brittle, is old, is bombarded with neutrons and gamma shines and X-rays and beta rays. It's shut down because it's old, it's brittle, and the reactors are, the containment is pressurized at around 1,000 psi. Pointless North, look at this one here, I don't know if anybody noticed this one. Pointless North Coast nuclear free push is slammed. What's wrong with her head, man? A northern, this is Australia, north-southwest councillor has criticised her, well, they spelled councillor wrong, look at that. Criticised her council's effort to ban disease factories as pointless symbolism, which does nothing to address ratepayers' concern, but she was in the minority. And she misspelled criticized too. Look at that. It's supposed to have a Z in that. Really, in 3 words, you misspelled 2 of them. Oh, that's right. You're a journalist. All is forgiven. I see that a lot with the Australians. They're not very good at spelling. I mean, I'm terrible. I'm not saying that, but they're journalists. That's a major Australia media. Be on a paywall, so. She said it's pointless North Coast nuclear free push was slammed. Well, first off, there's a ban since 1989 in Australia for nuclear power plants. They recognized that back then these are disease factories. They were trying to protect the population. Looks like censorship has gone nutty again tonight, eh? Wow. Should South Korea prosecute the recent nuclear delegation to Fukushima for faking the inspections last week? We're going to cover that sometime this week. I'm still waiting for them to release the official, because I gathered up quite a lot already, but I'm waiting for them to release the official, because that'll come out this week in the media, right? And we're going to come out and shit on them. Because, why not, right? It's almost summer. That's the right thing to do. The Savannah Riverside uncovering its role during the Cold War. According to the Department of Energy, about 36 metric tons of plutonium was produced at the Savannah Riverside between 1953 and 88. 36 metric tons of plutonium. 2 pounds can kill everything on the planet is what they say, right? So guess how much has been released into the environment? Fukushima reactors had 21 million pounds, or 21,000 pounds. Just in the reactors, which was 2% plutonium, right? Plutonium and tritium are dangerous substances. Ooh, you can't say tritium's dangerous. That's illegal, isn't it? You're supposed to say it's wonder bars. So he's behind, I love how they tell this story. Well, the worker doesn't have to worry because he's behind 4-foot thick lead glass. That's what's shielding him, Dana. Yeah. Honest, Dana. No, he's not. You know why? You see those gloves? He's going to put his hands in them, and his hands don't have 4-foot thick lead glass around it. And he's going to stick his hand in there. So they trick him. Oh, you're protected. There's 4-foot thick lead glass there to protect you. Don't worry, it's a good pension if you can live long enough to collect it. Nobody's collecting a pension that works at that job. Do you get the scam? Oh, you're behind the 4-foot thick lead glass. That'll protect you. These are called glove boxes, right? Now, those gloves can't protect you from gamma shines, X-rays, neutron bombardments, and everything else. You get the scam? Well, we got 15 people on the show. We're killing it again tonight. If you work really, really, really hard for a decade, you too can get 15 people on your show. Unlike that bitch from the United States, Cleo, is it? She got 750,000 subscribers since last year. Because she's a monster, see? One such nuclear accident that occurred in December 1970 where the fuel rods melted in the site's C reactor, which could have led to a meltdown. Well, no, that is a meltdown. Don't lie or nothing. The reactor core similar to what happened at 3 Mile Island. A month later, a considerable amount of radiation was released from the K reactor after a source rod melted. Geez, they have so many of these at all these national laboratories. You actually can't keep track of it anymore. I got to do a better job at that. I apologize to everybody. I'll get it together. Just bear with me for a couple of more decades. I'll get it together. Office of Environmental Management, the focus at Savannah Riverside changed in 1992 to environmental cleanup, nuclear material management. There's two big laughs. And research and development. No. It starts off with research and development. At some point in the next 1,000 years, we'll do environmental cleanup and nuclear material management. They ain't managing jack shit. They dumped it into the Savannah River for at least 2 decades straight. And I'm talking barrels. Barrels. It's absurd what they dumped into the Savannah River. Well, it's necessary, Dana. The Ruskies could have the Soviet Union could have the bomb. I got to protect herself by killing all the species on the planet. Although the site's 5 reactors are no longer operating, 2 are being used to store nuclear fuel, nuclear material. Nuclear fuel, just say it like it is. Stop baiting around the freaking bush. Call it what it is. Call it what it is. Oh, we're down to 13 viewers now. Woo! Thank God I work like a dog all day, every day. Over the next decade or so, the plan is to clean up the Savannah River site, including 35 million gallons of radioactive liquid waste stored in 43 underground tanks. They dumped 1.4 million of those same tanks in the Hanford into the soil. 1.4 million. It's enough liquid, nuclear, brutal, we're talking lethal doses by the liter if you're just walking past it, that you can build a 6-foot wide aquarium 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. No, Dana, it could all fit in a swimming pool, Dana. Stop your lying, Dana. To date, 308 of the 1,126 facilities have undergone deactivation and decommissioning. Really? 308 needed to be decommissioned. 412 of the 515 waste units. They got 515 waste units have been remediated, they claimed. Like, you can't trust this industry. Not even 1 inch. You can't. There's not a single person there you can trust. That's why they're so evil. They'll cut each other's throat for a coffee. And 40 remediation systems are in operation addressing 14 groundwater contamination areas. Like, groundwater is not a puddle on the ground that you can put a fence around, okay? Groundwater is gone down into the tables. It's gone. You got 14 groundwater contamination areas. And you got 40 remediation systems in operation at 14 ground. How do you remediate groundwater contamination? Because you dump it in the soil, it goes down to the groundwater. They're a curse. They're stupid curse. Oh, we're down to 12. They're dialing us down, folks. Look at that. That's desperation, eh? To date, 308 of the 1,126 facilities undergone deactivation. Yeah, oh, sure they have. With the glove boxes, right? Everybody's protected in the glove boxes. The Savannah Riverside is one of several Department of Energy land holdings. Several! They got dozens and dozens of Superfund sites, for goodness sakes. They can study the environmental impact in the nuclear wasteland. Then they show you a blue heron. the worst species on the planet is the pro-nuclear. More from Green Matters. Does nuclear energy cause pollution? It's hemorrhaging radiation into the environment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from the fuel pools alone. It's hemorrhaging. The fuel pools are still splitting the atoms with no containment. Like the amount we're talking about in each fuel pool is like a plume covering the planet. There's 413 of them or something worldwide currently. Plants, but that's around 1,000 fuel pools. That's not counting the military and universities and research reactors, blah, 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 and Israel and China and Pakistan and India and everywhere else. Australia don't have any nuclear power plants, but they have a nuclear reactor and a stupid amount of nuclear waste from a single reactor. Nuclear power isn't as clean as the industry makes it seem. There's nothing clean about it. It's ridiculously filthy. I get kind of sick of the lies sometimes. It's hard for me to be nice to the nuclear industry. I'm usually doing pretty good the last couple of number of months, but every once in a while I wig out. Nuclear energy causes pollution, but in a different way than other energy sources. First off, the fuel pools, they're all surrounded by farms, and the fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation. It's hemorrhaging. It's a constant. It's 120,000 liters out of each fuel pool. There's 2 fuel pools for each reactor. So if it's got 4 reactors, there's 8 fuel pools. Each fuel pool is decades of reactor cores, and they're splitting the atoms. That boils off about 120,000 liters in each pool, and that boils off and liberates the atoms and particles and the isotopes into the environment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and long after the plant is closed. Those isotopes never go away. They're pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. Now look at it, showing you a picture of, I think that's Indian Point, is it? Yes, nuclear energy causes pollution. One of the most significant types of pollution nuclear energy plants emit is thermal pollution. No, it's fallout, radioactive fallout, visible plumes of radioactive fallout. Why is this such a hard thing for anybody? That's the industry can't survive without lying and manipulating, deceiving. It's constant fallout. It never stops. It never goes away. It pulses energy at the speed of light every second for millions and millions of years. When an industry changes the temperature of natural water, it also does it where it heats up. It's boiling a couple of billion gallons a day. It's boiling 1 million gallons a minute. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. That's per reactor, by the way. 4,500 tons a minute. A minute. That's 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks of water a minute. Think about that. And thermal pollution boils all the water that's going back into the river that don't go up the evaporation stacks. Now the skinny stacks on these sites is emitting from the fuel pools. Sluggish plutonium pit production tells allies and adversaries the U.S. nuclear modernization is not important. Well, they don't need to. They got thousands of nuclear weapons. They got billions of dirty bombs, as they call it, nuclear munitions, bullets, and 155 millimeter depleted uranium rounds. There's an absurd amount of it, really. If the world knew, everybody would protest immediately what was really going on in nuclear power plants. Everybody worldwide would protest right away. I forgot to have the repeat on, did I? Assuming. Production of tritium, you know, the stuff that's supposed to be harmless that they use in nuclear weapons. and that destroys your chromosomes, your DNA, and your cells, you know, the harmless stuff. Nothing's harmless in nuclear. That's the problem with nuclear. Could prove a significant limiting factor in the introduction of a new nuclear weapon delivery method, like a sea-launched cruise missiles. Already done it, been there, done it. And other attempts by the U.S. to beef up its nuclear arsenal. It doesn't need to beef up its nuclear article. Nuclear is not going to protect you. You can't counter Russia by blowing up the planet, morons. Good God, they're such evil people, aren't they? Nuclear submarine officer recalled when his submarine's periscope hit a small one-man fishing boat, knocking him over the side. It was over in the Philippines or something. And so he makes fun of it, laughing about it. Everything's funny. Ha 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 ha. I'm sure he's still telling the story or something, hitting his boat and knocking him overboard, but then never appearing. So they don't even know if he survived. Scum, man. You don't need nuclear submarines because you can't use the nuclear weapons, morons. And you have so many accidents, you've basically killed the planet already. Radioactive liquid waste processing fully operational at Idaho Disease Factory's National Laboratory. It is now treating sodium-bearing waste entirely, which is the next step in removing remaining liquid radioactive waste from nearby Cold War-era underground tanks. They dumped 1.4 million tanks into the soil in Hanford. 1.4 million. So now the time, there's like 300,000 gallons per tank. But in this story, they're talking about 1,470 gallons of waste to a more stable, granular solid. They filled 47 stainless steel canisters with waste and safely stored them. Yeah, but what about the 1.4 million tanks you already dumped in the soil? Scumbags. Just 450 billion gallons we're talking about. And second off, you can't believe a single word they tell you. Have anybody ever caught them telling the truth a single time? I haven't. 2023 Nuclear Waste Program retirement interview from Hanford. And I just got that from my record, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, my grandpappy was a pro-nuclear scumbag, and his pappy was a pro-nuclear scumbag, and his pappy was a pro-nuclear scumbag, and my son's going to be a pro-nuclear scumbag. Speaking of scumbags, Jennifer Hayden was named the president COO of Albuquerque's National Museum of Nuclear. Man, what kind of low life is she? She would take that job. Oh crap, look at that. Imagine coming around the corner at night and running into someone looking at you like that. Holy shit, eh? That is freaky, man. What does she do with all those empty bottles? I wonder of makeup she's using. Building monuments probably to the nuclear industry. U.S. Department of Energy, Marvel. You know Marvel Comics? They had to steal that name for their reactors that don't exist to try to give it the right to get the kids to look at it, see? And this is from Nuclear Engineering International. It's equivalent to saying I like Jim Jones, you know? These people worried me, man. There's such a disconnect. If you asked them what is a human, they would say, well, I know one. When I was in high school, there was this human. I haven't seen one since I got in the nuclear industry. Right. Humans are going to be scumbags. No humans allowed. Imagine how desperate they are got to be to censor me the way they're censoring me. Imagine how pathetic you got to be to do that to me. Imagine what kind of moron you got to be to take that job. These are deep questions. E equal MC squared got nothing on these questions. Marvel, yeah. There is no small modular reactor. There is no micro prototype. The prototype they're talking about is a non-nuclear prototype, for goodness sakes, right? But according to the headline from Scumbag Nuclear Engineering, they got a small modular reactor. When you go read the story, there's no small modular reactors. Just one scam after another scam after another scam. I got almost twice as many votes as I do people watching the show. Well, a few minutes ago, I did have twice as many. Livermore Lab, Samba, right? You know Samba, the head of the Nuclear Energy Agency? Remember her? They stole her name and used it there to give her some street creds. Boost computing capacity to better study nuclear weapons physics. Really? 80 years of studying it and you haven't figured it out yet? Oh, Dana, it's Livermore National Laboratories, one of the biggest disease factories in that part of the country. Why wouldn't we consider a nuclear waste repository anyway? Jeffrey Brooks. Stories like this bother me, eh? Conflates the voting compact with nuclear waste. The opinion column is an attack on opportunities for all Nevadians to score big federal dollars in return for having a nuclear disease factory at Yucca Mountain. The problem with Yucca Mountain, first off, the calculation on Yucca Mountain was how much heat can it hold for 200 years, because you weren't planning on humans being here after that, I guess. And it was built on a fault line. They spent $20 billion just on litigation. Why would you use a mountain anyway? How'd you get that stupid? And so then they wanted to fill up Yucca Mountain with air conditioners. And that way they can put more nuclear waste in the mountain, because it's all about how much heat comes off the mountain, right? From the nuclear waste. Because nuclear waste could heat up a mountain. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. Oh, this was a straw man argument. Near Battle Mountain, one can see several square miles of uprooted, scarred, mountainous desert land. Well, mountains are not deserts, I might add. So that gold, silver, and copper can be extracted. Processing of these ores entailed the creation of vast quantities of tailing, often contaminated. And will the land be restored when mining ceases? In contrast, the nuclear disease factory will be inside a geological stable mountain, invisible to everybody. It's like sweeping it all under the rug. It will be in a highly security area, and the waste will be stored in indestructible containers. And the pristine beauty of the area will not change. That's a straw man argument. First off, just because it's invisible don't mean it's not there. When it melts down, it'll crack the earth open, and it'll hemorrhage into the environment forever. It will be a high security area. Well, no one's going to steal nuclear waste, moron. And the waste will be stored in indestructible containers. No, once they're bombarded with neutrons, they're going to break down. Not maybe, but guaranteed. And that's usually 40, 50 years that'll break down. You don't have 4,000 or 5,000 years studies to prove it's not going to break down somewhere in that period of time. Once it breaks down, it doesn't need oxygen to burn in a chain reaction. It comes in contact with water. That water, like a liter, will expand 1,400 cubic feet per millisecond, per liter. That'll crack the earth open. And goodbye planet and species after that. I'm not even going to read the nonsense. Let's keep going. We got lots of nonsense. Let's get through it. Sacramento fire hazmat team responds to damaged nuclear device. Wait, what? And so they allegedly had a device, because the nuclear industry has found ways to use nuclear rather than safe stuff to do the same job. Let's use nuclear. Like your smoke detectors are americium-241, which is a serious carcinogen, by the way. And it pulses energy at the speed of light every second. It has a predictable life. And because it's such a small amount, they said, you don't need to worry about putting it in a landfill. Well, you do got to worry about putting it in a landfill because you're going to decay to plutonium-241 eventually, for starters. And not only that, when you're talking about billions of smoke detectors, you're talking about a huge amount of radiation, a huge amount of americium, a huge amount of plutonium. You're a curse. You're not about a curse. That's what nuclear, pro-nuclear, not about a curse. So damaged nuclear density gauge. I'll give you an example. They have this, well, it's just like the size of the tip of my fingernail piece that got loose from one of these devices a few months ago in Australia when they were transporting it somewhere. There's a little spot where you insert it, see, of cesium-137, and it fell out. And what they done was they drove down the highway in vehicles with radiation detectors and helicopters flying over the highway for like 600 miles, and they found it. And if you drive past it at 60 miles per hour and you don't stop, that's the equivalent of getting a couple of chest x-rays. Driving past it, a little speck on the side of the highway. It was so powerful, that's what they done. They drove down the highway with the Geiger counters and found it. Listen, if you're getting couple of so-called chest x-rays from driving past it in your car, imagine what you're getting when they're bringing those casts on transfer trucks down the highway at slow speeds. People in the houses on the side of the highway are being blasted. That story got a lot of traction here, that they spelled councillor wrong and criticized wrong. But anyway, the rebuttal, it was a rebuttal to her. That was great. But you spelled two of the major words wrong? Do you think that was an accident? No. Because you were picking on nuclear, they put the editors who does the final read on it, put that in there. Nuclear is a big player in getting Canada net zero. What are you talking about? Oh, that was Joe from New Scale, I believe. Hang on. Nuclear big player getting the net zero. Did he put his name up there yet? Yeah, but he took it down. Hang on, I'll figure it out. No, I won't actually. Hang with me. I think, don't quote me, don't, but yeah, I can't remember. The trials and tribulations of an anti-nuclear human. Honestly, only humans can be anti-nuclear. That's the strange thing about that statement. You gotta be human to be anti-nuclear. Over half the contaminated water leaked at Monticello Nuclear Disease Factory was recovered. Now, they waited 4 months to tell you there was a leak. 4 months. And the leak was 10,000 45-gallon drums. That's not a leak. By any other standards, it's not a leak. But no matter what happens at a nuclear plant, it's a leak, Dana. That was a smart move, Dana. I gotta tell you what happened, but you can probably imagine it. Over half the contaminated water that leaked at the disease factory was recovered. Substantial progress recovering the contaminated groundwater. Now they're claiming they got pipes at this plant that only transport tritium. And I've never heard of that before. I never ever heard of pipes that only carry tritium. And they couldn't fix it because it was a high pressure pipe. Well, the only high pressure they got there is the ones connected to the reactor. So that's full of uranium, plutonium, and 1,000 other fission products is what we're talking about. They call it tritium. It's so despicable, it's hard to believe that this is still happening to humanity. And this, like they don't, the small corporations of nuclear don't own this planet, and they're responsible now for destroying the whole planet over the last 80 years just from the emissions. It's revolting, isn't it? More than half of a radioactive isotope that leaked. The pipe initially leaked. Using the word leaked, every time they use the word leaked, they should get a punch in the mouth for it. At the Monticello nuclear generator, and I'm mad tonight because of these stories, by the way, allowing 400,000 gallons. I don't mean it physically. They should be arrested, charged, convicted, and the conviction should be everybody's family that lost someone to cancer should be allowed to punch them in the mouth. I mean that's pretty reasonable. Or the back of the head, whatever works. 1.5 million liters, legally though, right? Through the courts. I'm not advocating punching them in the head, of course. They advocate murdering you and your loved ones and all the species, and there's 1,800 diseases. They're okay. They can do whatever they want. I can't say anything because they have rights we don't. 1.5 million liters of water apparently is called a leak these days. Imagine that. Unless you do it, then it's an environmental catastrophe. The first leak, every time I heard the word leak, I just not very impressed, let's put it that way. The first leak wasn't publicly announced until March, 4 months later. So then they said, well, we 4 months ago we had a leak, and we're going to check to see if there's any traces. So they checked and they didn't find any traces. But you know why? Because it happened 4 months ago. You got any idea how a kind of despicable piece of shit would do something like that? What kind of vicious scumbag could do something like that? What kind of monster would do something like that? Well, it's literally everybody in the nuclear industry, Dan. Yeah, I know. What's the odds, right? Monticello city leaders said in release Tuesday, Excel scumbag energy, disgusting, despicable Excel, which owns the disease factory, collected 53%, and they're calling it tritium. And there should be 1 million people go down there and protest in the streets. And crews have pumped more than 1.1 million gallons of water at the plant. Company expects the pump to continue through the year. First off, everything was frozen. It was minus 30. It doesn't soak down to the ground. It runs across the surface, right? It's like pavement. It's frozen. The company expects the pumping to continue throughout the year. Concentration of tritium in the groundwater has declined. Like, to claim that there's a tritium leak at a nuclear power plant is too much. It's too much. There's millions of people downriver. And if you don't voice it appropriately, how can you be warned and concerned? If I say, oh, they're pretty naughty, that doesn't bring the gravity of the genocide they created downriver, the mass murder, the disease factories that they caused downriver from these massive hemorrhaging into the Mississippi. Everybody wants to coddle them and pamper them. I'm not capable. We already killed the fucking planet, for fuck's sake. Wake up. Stop being such a fucking baby. Call it like it is. There have been no recorded measurements of isotopes beyond the plant. You got any idea how ludicrous that assertion actually is? I can't read any more of it. I got to move on. Because I'm starting to lose my mind, right? Because that was a real fucking event, okay? Excuse the language. I apologize, all 21 of you. U.S. earmarks USD 275 million for small modular reactor project in Romania. Why don't you keep that in your own country, which is the government, right? Because that's New Tech they're talking, or not New Tech, but thank God I forgot their name. Look at that. Wow, that's a good thing. 275 million. How many? Well, every 5 million is a megawatt of geothermal. Less than half the price of disease factories, aka nuclear. And to show you these stupid pictures. Well, why are you going to build it all the way down in Romania? Why don't you build in your own country first, moron? Is that a stupid question, or am I just being unreasonable again? Court rejects case opposing restart of Miyagi Prefecture nuclear plant. That's some good news for a change. Yeah, I'm liking it. I'm sorry, I got that wrong, didn't I? Court rejects case opposing the restart of Miyagi Prefecture. Oh, fuck. I'm sorry. I guess it's going to be one of those nights by the looks of it. I've had a rough couple of days, let's put it that way. My apologies. I'll show you a bunch of videos at the end of it. But there was a gleam of hope, though, at the very last video that I noticed when I was doing the editing. When I was doing the editing, I think I figured out what happened. I'm pretty sure, actually. We'll know tomorrow, because I'm going to bust myself up again tomorrow trying to figure it out. A district court on Wednesday rejected local residents' call to halt the restart of a disease factory in Miyagi. And Miyagi is a nuclear wasteland. Like, it's been abandoned for 12 years. No, but let's get the nuclear up and running. We'll worry about people and their homes and everything else some other generation. How a crew of peace activists challenged the nuclear arms race and won a major victory. Yeah, but that was only temporarily. And we created Greenpeace out of that fiasco, and they turned their backs on humanity a long, long time ago. They're what we call controlled opposition. Nuclear power won't help Maine reach its clean energy goal. Well, there's somebody with a head on their shoulder for a change. What's the odds of that? Jeez, never seen that coming. In Maine and in the state legislators across the nation, the nuclear industry lobby is promoting renewed calls for investments in nuclear energy. By the way, I'm Dana. Hey, how you doing? You can call in if you're foolish, like me, at 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. Yeah, baby. Where was I? What was I? Oh, in Maine, legislators, there's been 3 bills in this session that would promote nuclear power in the state. Since launching my career in the energy industry in 1975, which is quite the career, I have repeatedly witnessed campaigns heralding the pending emergence of nuclear power. In the mid-70s, there was a promise of 1,000 disease factories, aka nuclear reactors, would be up and running by 2000, producing power too cheap to meter. As recent as a decade ago, the U.S. reportedly again on the cusp of a nuclear renaissance. And this renaissance and others' earlier predictions never materialized. In this latest campaign, the spotlight is on small modular reactor disease factories. However, there is no market for commercial nuclear power plants in this country, And there has not been one for 30 years, if ever. Well, there wasn't, right? There was never, it was an artificial market. They were promising nuclear power plants without even having the design approved. A new look into why the U.S. blocked exports of nuclear fuel components to Coburg, which is Africa, has one nuclear power station. And you gotta have a subscription to read it, but I'm just not gonna go there. Vallecio's nuclear disease factory site to be decommissioned. It's closing for good. And Livermore and Sunno. It's between Livermore and Sunno. You can imagine what that disease factory is all about. Hitachi, the site's owner, announced plans to sell 1,600-acre property for an unspecified price to North Star Group Services of New York City. Before shutting down in 1963, the reactor delivered about 40,000 megawatt hours to the grid, according to the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. The reactor was designed at Argonne National Laboratory, the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. So, you know, this is one disgusting, it was built by Bechtel. That's one big stupid disaster. U.S. Department of Energy grant supports terrestrial energy licensing of molten salt reactors. Yeah, but they don't have a license. It's a million pieces of paper. And if the U.S. Department of Energy is involved, it's going to be 100 years before it comes to fruition, if ever. Orano to support Japan's studies on mixed oxide fuel reprocessing, which is France, right? It was originally Areva, and they went bankrupt, so they didn't have to fulfill their obligations of nuclear fuel for 100,000 years. And they kept everything, all the same people, the same phone number, everything. They just changed the name of Orano, which is by the way, we're talking about the French government. The French government supports Japan's studies on disgusting, hideous, monstrous mixed oxide fuel reprocessing, which should be a crime against humanity. It's contaminated, just La Hague in France and Donneray and Sellafield in the United Kingdom have contaminated the Arctic, for goodness sakes, in all the European countries on its own, if you didn't have all the other events. France, Netherlands calls for, Netherlands, that's right. I'm supposed to do another show with Monique Wallace. I done a show there about a month ago with her. We're going to do another show, hopefully soon. Hopefully this week, even. Part 2 of part 1. Because when you're doing the shows, it's always a little trepidation with the people that are watching because they don't understand, right? So you got to break down the details a lot more. You got to be played nice because you're on a show, right? I do it with radio shows over the years. You just got to be nice, no swearing, no being a bastard, no being Dana, in other words, just tell the story. Can't be me. I get it. The only reason this works, though, is because I'm me. That's why this actually works, because I don't give a fuck about calling the nuclear industry a piece of shit. That's why it works, right? It only works when I'm Dana. I'm got to be Mr. Nice Guy all the time. It's not the same, right? You don't have that same energy. You got to watch everything, because everybody's so sensitive. They don't, right? They're afraid you're going to swear or whatever, and who cares if all the species are being exterminated? Just don't. I mean, everybody watches Hollywood movies. They don't stop swearing. Austria, France, Ireland, and Netherlands have called on the European Union to toughen laws to curb the impact of private jets. Well, first off, 15 container ships produce more pollution than all the cars and jets on the planet combined. There's 90,000 of those ships on the ocean at any given time, by the way. Insider threat program delayed at Department of Energy poses risk to nuclear security. Theft of nuclear material. Theft! You can't keep it there. The fuel pools are hemorrhaging at 24 hours a day. And the majority of the nuclear disease factories, well, I keep saying it, I better show you something, I suppose. The majority of the nuclear disease factories are surrounded by, wait for it, drum roll please. Once I was a little drum roller boy. So most nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. I'm assuming that's a coincidence that almost every nuclear power plant worldwide and waste site is surrounded by farms. That's got to be a coincidence. They wouldn't do that on purpose, would they? Now they know the farms are going to suck up radiation because they have an absurd amount of studies on all kinds of different foods, showing that it's going to suck up radiation. So why put these rapeseed, which is pretty common around nuclear plants because they make oil out of it, which is a good way to extract the radiation, by the way, and make sure it gets into your food easier. Cesium, by the way, immediately damages the heart muscles. And it also goes in your thyroid too, cesium-137, 134 will go in your thyroid glands. See all the farms, you see the fresh water? That's how they keep down the background radiation, is they whisk it away. So they know how the radiation, just because they've done it on cesium, everything else is applicable, right? It's transferred by tree roots and plants and bushes and everything else, and berries and potatoes, roots. Roots is the roots, I'm told. So why are they all surrounded by farms when nuclear experts, don't be fooled by paid industry consultants. Low doses of iodine radiation does cause cancer, but it causes heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. Right? They know potatoes are sucking up the radiation. They know the roots and the meadows are sucking up the radiation. So then why are almost all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms? All the better to poison you in your supermarkets and your loved ones and your children, which are hundreds of times more vulnerable. We have to protect the females of the planet of all species. They're absurdly more vulnerable. If you get rid of the females, no more producing, then what happens? Everything disappears eventually. Health physicist in the U.S. worries about inhaling hot particles from Fukushima. Here. Over half the radioactive water at the nuke disease factory in Monticello was recovered, Excel claims. Like, all they do is lie. They got to lie to cover up what they've done, and so they have to tell a lot of lies because they're always doing something wrong. I think it's striking how evil they actually are. Seabrook signs a $40 million tax agreement with NextEra. And here's what it means to your tax bill. Well, it actually means nothing to your tax bills if you live there, folks. And when Seabrook pulls out of there, the community collapses because they become completely dependent, like crackheads, nuclear crackheads. Jeff Duncan says Savannah River site could help secure America's nuclear energy supplies. And Jeff Duncan is a sack of shit. He's a despicable. He's talking about mixed oxide fuel. Savannah River site's already tried mixed oxide fuel a number of times. We're going to play that video. Videos. We're going to play videos. I'll duck out. So you got to watch it all because at the end of it is the punchline. when I was doing the editing, I kind of figured out what happened. But so, it's the spring here on the east coast of Canada, so we got to do a shakeout trip with the boat. Now, we got problems from last year with the boat we're trying to resolve. And I thought I might figure it out, but if I disconnect the tilt mechanism in the motor from the motor itself, but I still got one at the throttle, and that one works. And you'll see me do it in the video. It works. But anyway, I'll bore you when I can play the video. Oh, hang on. I'm gonna bore you when I can play the video. Come on, Dana, play the video. What are you waiting for? Hang on, I'm almost there. We'll get there. 3, 2. Suzuki hood on the ground. Can only mean one thing. We're going to try to disconnect that switch, the tilt function, and you can't get at it, bastard. So we got to take this big black piece off, which is a 10 millimeter. And I don't have a 10 millimeters. I had to go buy one because I lost the 10 millimeters. You can see why we need power washers for all kinds of stuff, right? So I got the 10 millimeter. I had 3 before and I managed to lose them all. They're pretty popular, right? 10 millimeter. And we're just gonna go pop that off and see if we can disconnect. A freaking disaster, right? Can't keep up with it. I'm getting much healthier now because you can see everything has gone to shit for the last since I got out of the hospital. Okay, so I got that piece off the motor. I'm going to put it back together, and we got to tilt the motor up and away. The motor tilts. Up and away. Up. Yeah, that's not going to hurt. Turn it off. Well, we can go up and put the boat in the water and give it a try. It's just too windy. It might be too windy to put it in the water, but we'll just go find out. Seems it's been sitting around all winter. Seems it's been sitting around all winter. That's close enough. Get her done, I suppose. Let's get her done. So you know what that means? That means we got to clean. We're getting brake lights. Well, that might be the problem. I sprayed it with electronics cleaners, but you usually got to do it. So we'll hit it with the wheel. We'll stick a little bit in the holes, and same thing over here. We'll clean that with the wheel. Stick a bit in that hole and see if we can get that contact before we take it out. Alright, so I got one light working. Do I hear 2 lights? Give me 2 lights, 2 lights, 2 lights. Oh, wow. Well, theoretically the brakes should work and the blinkers should also work, but let's not worry about the brakes. Let's try the blinker. So we got the boat behind us. Probably can't see it. menace. Try that again. And because this can snap around, but I forget how to do it. Is it 3 pulls? There's a 1 pull. So we're gonna go up and just stick the motor in the water because the tide is coming up. Saturday afternoon is the 27th, 28th, and 27th, I think it is. And so we took the second tilt switch that was on the motor itself, disconnected it, wrapped the connections up in tape so the water don't get in there and screw me over later. And the motor still tilted up from the throttle control. And so we got the booster cables with me to start the kicker too while I'm there. It's blowing too much wind, even if it does work. It's like a shakeout trip because we bought the launch permit yesterday, which was $75, I think, for a year's launch. $75 for a year's lunch. Charlie would be so proud. Okay, we'll update when we get to the wharf, I guess. Okay. So, we're just going to try the boat motor and maybe the kicker while we're here, but it's a pretty stiff breeze. I don't really want to fight with the boat today. The tide's coming up, so remember to open the front door this time so I can actually just climb straight in instead of trying to crawl around the boat. Let's give it a go. Let's see how it works. Oh, this is pretty stupid. I could possibly go wrong. So we've got no... Yeah, she's not getting the goose. Let's try that again. Not even trying. Let's give her some more pumps on the throttle, I suppose. Yeah. Am I hooked up to the right one? Yeah, that's the right one. The oil filter, the rate core has changed. But I already, it's got a kink in the, I'm holding it up, right? That's tough. She lost pressure somewhere. Must have been when I was cranking the engine, I suppose. So pressurizing the system again to the rate core filter. Okay, well that's pumped up now. I've done it at the house. I don't see any gas in the hole. I don't see any gas floating around. That don't mean fuck all. That don't mean fuck all. Let's try again, I suppose. I'm gonna have to go home and take that rate core filter off. The little kill switch is hooked up. That was nothing. Now she's dead duck. Wow. There's nothing. I don't even got power to the motor. Holy shit.
Which means I can't tilt the motor when I want to get out of there.
We just lost power. Well, that's not good. My motor is down. Can't go losing power with your motor down, Dana. Can't go losing power with the motor down, god darn it. What's let go in here? I wonder. Something let go. I don't know what that one is. He might be important.
That's the antenna.
You know what that one is.
That's got nothing to do with the motor, those wires. Oh,
That's a good sound.
you should get that when they
My
return the key,
battery's
right?
flat.
Don't you wait
How did I lose power that quick? It tried to turn over. I think the batteries are fucking shot or something.
No, the batteries they're not good, but they're not shot.
I charged him up.
They're like 5 years old, those batteries.
I charged him up. Oh, this is a disaster.
I should get another seat there.
I'm not even getting. Turn the power off. Because that's hooked up directly, so
Because it runs right up to that
we're
switch,
going to have
right?
to pull that up. Out of the water.
The motor is different from the electronics.
Got no power. There's no lights.
I'll show you.
Oh, I know which one is the power coming from the motor. Hooray. I got the motor up.
So I had to tow the boat out of the water with the motor down, which left me about this much from the pavement. And so I squeezed it up, and then I was probably going to have this much, but you still had to go over like a ledge to get to the parking lot, right? Got no choice now. The motor won't tilt up. And so here I was on the parking lot, a bunch of people there. There was a bunch of guys who were putting out a piece of a wharf. I asked them to look up and see where the relief valve for the tilt hydraulics was to, because there's a relief valve where you turn it and it'll take the pressure, and you can manually lift it up, and there's a manual lock you could use to lock it in that position, because you can't drive down the road with the motor straight down, right? You're only a few inches, or 2 inches maybe at best off the ground. Okay, so that's what the motor looks right now, because it tilted up 3/4 of the way, then it cut out again. But I'll show you coming up. We just got a couple more short clips. Let's play them for you.
Drag it out of the water. It was a couple of inches to spare, lucky me. I never got it tilted all the way up. I'm not sure what's going on. The batteries were all the way charged, and even when I had 2 batteries on, I reconnected.
Okay, so you remember when I was turning the engine over and then that was a long time, right?
That's pretty unusual to have to do something like that. And it was my fault that I didn't repressurize the system right away. Because it hasn't been started all winter, right? So that gas would have evaporated where I was doing the other work on it. So remember when I was turning it over the second time and I turned the camera around and looked back? And I remember myself, didn't I see smoke that time? So watch this. I zoom right in for you. Set it again. See the smoke? Look at that. So originally there's two cables off the engine, the negative and the positive, and I ran the number 4 cable from the fuse or from the switch directly to those two cables. And I connected them with a stainless steel bolt, and wrapped it up in tape. But it got weak. There used to be tanks. I used to have 5-gallon jerry cans and everything right there. All. I went to Alaska 6 times with that boat, right? It got towed, sometimes, but whatever. 3 to 4 months a year, each year for 6 years on the ocean. And I had done all the wiring myself, so I built the steering column, all the wires underneath that. I done all that myself, right? And I've done this for many years. So normally I build 2 wiring harnesses. And that way, if I have an issue, I can tear one wiring harness and put in the new one, right? Which is kept in a waterproof bag. But you see the smoke coming out of there, that's the connection. So I melted down that connection finally after all these years. That's got to be why I haven't got power. Because I got power to the radar and the VHF, the sounders and everything else, the lights and all that. But I don't have power to the engine. So it's probably, but then again, now, I hooked that switch back up, by the way, and the motor, once it started coming up, I let go of the throttle, I let go of the switch, it kept coming up on its own. That's the problem with that switch. That's why we had to disconnect it. And we think that's why I was having problems at the end of the year, right? I had 2 problems. We had the idler control valve, which we replaced, was the original problem. But along the way, we ended up with a bad switch. And so that told, because it's electronic, right? It won't run with when it's doing the tilt. We're assuming that's what's going on. So this other little clip was today is the first time with water pressure, the pressure washer. I spent 2.5 hours a day cleaning up with. I got a lot of work to do with the water. It's really good. This thing is really good. I done the truck and the bikes, the boat. First round anyway. So I'm really, really happy with that. That thing is just fantastic. And so I'm gonna have to do the boat three times on top of it. I got to pull the tanks out. There's 3 12.5-gallon tanks under the deck. I got to get them out, and I got to do the entire bottom of it. And that's gonna be like 4 or 5 days work to pull that off. And everything on that boat needs to be pressure washed because the boat's been to Alaska 6 times, right? No leaks, and what it was is the connection had burnt, and there wasn't enough cable to drive the power, let go finally, right? And I seen it was weak last year, and I forgot to fix it. So when I seen the smoke coming out of that section, then I realized that's got to be it. We'll know tomorrow because I'll be at it tomorrow. So that's it. So I'm going to close the poll down in a second. And I haven't got, I think it was Adam J. donated $25. Stephen Young donated $50. And James Lucid, as you know him in the comments section there, donated another 200 Canadian.
And we paid 75 for the lunch, years past for the lunch there. And we put gas, which is a fortune down there right now, into, we had to also buy stabilizer for the gas, which used to be $12 last year, is now like $19 a can. You needed 2 cans of that because I'm using 2 of the gas, the big 12.5 gallon gas cans right now. And then we had to go out and buy the, no big deal, the 10 millimeters. Because the 516 won't work on everything. It works on some of it, but 10 millimeters should be using 10 millimeters, otherwise you end up doing damage to those. And because they're the boats, that's all white metal that they're screwing into and everything else. But anyway, it worked out. We spotted what I'm assuming is the problem, is that connection. I knew it had to be a connection, right? Because I've done all the wiring myself, so I have a lot of faith in the work that I do. Like I said, we've been to Alaska 6 times. We've never had an issue with anything that I've done on that boat. In 6 years of hardcore ocean voyages, we've never had an issue. Okay, well, I guess that's it for Dana tonight. How did we do anyway? Where are we to? We're at it's 12 midnight my time, by the way. We're going to close the poll down here. Let's check the poll one more time. We got 48 votes and 22 watching. We got double the votes as we do people. We got double the likes as we do people watching. Should South Korea prosecute the recent nuclear delegation to Fukushima for faking the inspections? Because that's what they've done. And when they finally releases, the delegation releases their findings later this week, that'll be all over the media, right? We'll challenge their deceit and dishonesty and lies and everything else. And so they censored the living shit out of me for the last 3-4 weeks, and again tonight for the first show of the week. This is Sunday. Thank you, everybody who done the poll. Hugs for everybody. Yeah, we got 100% yay, says Colette, on the poll. That's hilarious. That's way too cute. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Yeah, I checked. I checked the bottom of the boat. I checked around the boat for any gas leakage, and I didn't find anything. Because you're losing pressure. But what it was is the engine hasn't been started all week, so it needs to suck up some gas, right? And you're only talking about that little pump. It's only barely fits in your hand, right? That's not much gas. It's got to go through the rate core, and but then we ran into bigger problems where the engine wouldn't even power up. The red lights wouldn't come on. There was no warning sirens whenever you turn the key, which is normal. So I'll figure it probably out tomorrow. I really disrespect that lady up there. She knows what she's doing is evil. And she has no problem with that. So she looks like a pretty nice person, but she's actually a piece of shit. What was the word I was going to use instead of a piece of shit? It's hard to replace the word piece of shit, is the problem, right? And still get that message across, right? Well, anyway, we'll figure it out. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Kick some more nuke-tard asses. That's what we do. I'm the anti-hero, apparently. Or just a normal, everyday person trying to do the moral
thing. Like all of you that follow these shows regularly, you're no different than me, right? You're trying to do the moral thing. That's why, and you're trying to learn, and you're trying to support, and you get it. And thank you for getting it. Same as if we got 48 votes, they got the poll. So, good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. We'll see everybody on the other side tomorrow night. Good night, everybody. If you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It might help. You never know. Take care.